Hi, it's Mr. Brough here. We are going to have a go at this useful question for the next intervention task. I will talk you through how you answer useful questions. We will analyse the two historical sources in quite a lot of depth, and then I'll show you a good structure for how you can answer these questions in quite a straightforward and simple way. Okay. So with useful questions, the focus of the question is to evaluate, to weigh up a couple of historical sources and work out how useful or how helpful they are at understanding one historical event. So what you always need to do, you need to have a look at the source first of all. You need to analyse the source, which means just have a good look and figure out what's going on. You have to figure out what the source is actually telling you, and there'll be evidence in the source, either written evidence or in pictures. And once you've worked out what the source is telling you, then what you have to do is work out how helpful that is in an inquiry into the topic that you are actually studying at that time. And then when you've done that, as part of your weighing up of how useful the source is, you also need to weigh up how accurate the source is. Do you have other evidence that supports what's being said in the source? And also what we need to do is think about the provenance of the source. So what's its nature, what's its origin, so what is it, where does it come from, and what's it trying to do? And it's really important that when you answer the question, all of those factors are addressed. So here's the question, and you have to remember that in the exam you might have about 12 minutes to answer this question. So you can't be writing too much. But we're going to analyse, evaluate two sources, sources B and D. We're going to figure out what they're saying, and we're going to figure out how helpful they are in telling part of the story of the growth of the Nazi Party in the 1920s. First of all, we'll have a look at source B. And source B was written in 1926 by a supporter of Hitler, of the Nazi Party. So this is the source. It says, a wave of jubilation rising from afar, moving into the lobby, announced the arrival of the Führer. And then the auditorium went wild. When the speech came to an end, there were tears in my eyes. Others, men, women and children, were as deeply affected as I. So we want to analyse this source to work out how helpful, how useful it is in understanding why the Nazi Party grew in the 1920s. And there are certainly a couple of very helpful aspects to this source. The first and probably the most important area where the source is helpful is it talks about Hitler's speaking ability. The fact that he could reduce men, women and children to tears. And certainly we know this. There is plenty of supporting evidence that suggests that Hitler was an absolutely brilliant, charismatic speaker, but that he also planned and choreographed his speeches. He would work on his movements and the pace of the speech. So certainly one of the main reasons why the Nazis developed in the 1920s was because of Hitler's speaking. Another less important area that we could focus on is the fact that the person who's quoted mentions the impact on men, women and children. And one of the other things about the Nazi Party and why they grew in the 1920s is because they appealed to lots and lots of different kinds of Germans. And we know some evidence that can support that because we know about the 25-point programme. And we know that the 25-point programme had policies that would appeal to nationalists on the right, such as ending immigration. We know that the Nazi Party had policies that would appeal to people on the left, such as profit sharing. And we also know that Hitler wanted to abolish the Treaty of Versailles, and we know that that would appeal to most Germans. So then we also need to analyse the provenance of the source. So who said it? When was it said? Why was it said? And then what does that do to how useful the source is? Well, this is a quotation from a Nazi Party member, someone who was obviously loyal to Hitler, because he refers to Hitler as a Führer. So it would be easy to dismiss this and just say, well, it's propaganda, it's biased, but that's not really an answer that's got any great depth. The question is, how useful is this source as an inquiry into why the Nazis developed? And what's useful, what's really useful about this source is that this is a first-hand account from someone who was there listening to and was moved by Hitler, which is one of the main reasons why the Nazi Party developed. So in that sense, because it is produced by someone who was actually a first-hand witness to Hitler's amazing speaking abilities, that makes the source quite useful. Source D. Now, source D is a photograph, and it's obviously a photograph that's been used by the Nazis for propaganda purposes, and we can see row upon row upon row of members of the SA, all incredibly well organised, very smart military outfits, a very smart military parade. And that helps us understand another reason for the growth of the Nazi Party and the role of the SA in the growth of the Nazi Party. Because what the SA did, at a time when Germany was in chaos, the SA marched and paraded in pristine uniform. And that would create an image of organisation and power and structure at a time when Germany was in chaos. And that would appeal to an awful lot of Germans. So in that sense, the source is really helpful because it shows the role that the SA played in conveying an image of organisation and discipline at a time of chaos. There is good supporting evidence. We've got good contextual knowledge that the SA, led by Ernst Röhm, loyal to Hitler, were very important in the development of the Nazi Party because their parades, their marches would convey an image of discipline and organisation, and also they were used to intimidate opponents and weaken opponents, which would therefore make the Nazi Party stronger. We also need to look at the provenance of the source, so what is it, where's it from, and its purpose, and that will make the source useful. The purpose of the source is propaganda, and actually in the picture you've not only got swastikas, but you've got slogans on banners saying Germany awake. So clearly the aim of the poster, the aim of the picture, the photograph, is to inspire Germans. So if you've got a picture that is designed to inspire ordinary Germans and it's focusing on the SA and their discipline and their organisation, that suggests that the Nazis themselves felt that the organisation and discipline of the SA was incredibly important for the development of the Nazi Party. So the fact that we've got evidence, we've got this wonderful photograph, it does make the source more useful. The propaganda purpose of the photograph actually makes the source more useful.
So a good way to structure your paragraphs is to use the APE method. So first of all, you answer the question, say how useful you feel the source is, and then prove your evaluation, prove your opinion with evidence from the source, so a quote from the source or referring to what you can see in the source, and then evaluate and weigh up how plausible, how believable the source is, and you do that by using your own knowledge and also by analysing the provenance of the source, knopping the source, where does the source come from, etc. So to APE source B, you would say that you think the source is quite useful because it suggests that one of the reasons for the growth of the Nazi Party was Hitler's speaking ability. You prove that with a quote from the actual source. The source mentions people crying, men, women and children. You then evaluate how plausible that is. So you use knowledge, what you already know about Hitler as a speaker, that he was a brilliant speaker, that he practiced his speeches, etc. And then you evaluate the plausibility, the strength of the source by knopping it. And in this case, it's, the source was produced by someone who was there at the time, was a first-hand witness to Hitler speaking, and that makes the source credible. So then the next paragraph, you would ape source D. You'd say source D is quite useful for an inquiry into the growth of the Nazi Party because it shows how important the SA were. You then prove that with referring to the source, because you would mention about how disciplined and organised the SA look, and that the SA have swastikas on their arms and they have banners referring to Nazi policies, and it's this idea that the SA are supporting the Nazis. And then you would again evaluate the plausibility, the strength, the believability of source D, and you would first of all do that by referring to what you know. And then the second thing, the very fact that the Nazis used this picture for propaganda purposes, that they publicised this picture, does suggest very strongly that actually the SA were very important to the growth of the Nazi Party, and that makes the source very useful. So have a go at answering the question, and when you've finished, hand it in to me and I'll mark it for you. If you've got any questions about it in the meantime, just come in and ask or email and I'll talk you through. But have a go. If you want to type it, that might be a good idea, because then you can edit it as you go along, as you get more skilled in being able to answer this question. So have a go, hand it in, and we'll mark it. Okay, thanks very much.